Hey guys, welcome back. So tonight I have a Generac GP7500e. It's a pretty nice machine, electric start. As you can see, it was well cared for. It has less than 20 hours on it, and I got this for free. And the reason for that is because it has some sort of engine problem. I didn't ask too many questions, but the guy did volunteer some information. Basically, he was running it. At least the story I was told, he was running it, sounded fine. He went to shut it down and something happened and it hasn't run since. So I'm going to pop the valve cover off and pull the spark plug and just see, if the valves are moving, if the piston's moving, and go from there. All right, offhand, I do see that both the rods are in place. Let me rotate the engine and see if they move. All right, so the intake valve is not moving. There's also no valve lash here. It looks like, the intake is definitely open, and this rod looks like it's pushed up. So I don't know if it's just a matter that the rod maybe popped out of its place. That would be nice. So let me loosen this up, maybe take this rocker off completely and see what's going on with this push rod. So one thing I find kind of odd, if the cam was worn down, that Tappet, I think it's called, would be down. Instead it's stuck up. Not quite sure why that would be, so I am going to try tapping it down. Right now the exhaust valve is open, so the intake should be closed. So I should be able to tap that down a little bit. Yeah, see that? The push rod just came up. I'm going to keep going until the exhaust starts to open. There. So I should be able to push this down freely. And it's not budging. I want to get a better look down here. And in order to do that, I removed the exhaust valve and I'm going to remove these studs next, as well as this guide. However, when removing this one, I noticed something right away, which I didn't notice on this side. On the top here, there's supposed to be a metal cap, which is what the rocker pushes on. So the rocker doesn't actually push on the valve stem directly. And when I removed this rocker, I could see that there was a cap sitting right on top of this valve stem. That was not on this one. So that tells me that the intake was loose, had excessive lash, and that cap popped off and probably went down. And that is probably causing our problem. So I'm going to continue on and get these out of the way so I can shine a light down there and see what's going on. All right, so I have no idea where that valve stem cap went. I do not see it anywhere. And, you know, when you look kind of in between, you may not be able to see it. There is an oil drain hole down there, and that does not look large enough to allow that cap through. So the only other place it could have gone is maybe into this engine breather, which goes down into the engine. Anyway, so kind of back to where I started. I think I need to open the engine up. I did run the magnet down kind of in the sump where the oil is, and nothing came out, no pieces, which is good, no carnage, but no cap either. So maybe it's down there, maybe it's not. Maybe someone took it out. I know the previous owner did pull this cap off, so who knows? But it's not here. All right, I don't know if there's any significance to this, but this oil that came out has a very kind of yellowish brown color. I've never really seen oil that quite looks like this, so I'm not sure what's going on with this oil. And also all these little pieces of debris. I don't think they were in this pan before I did the oil, drained the oil. And, you know, I took out a big chunk of it, kind of cleaned it up a bit, and it almost looks like an acorn or something similar. So it's definitely not metal. It's not magnetic, fairly soft, but I'd say an acorn, or it got in there. How? I don't know. Maybe a little critter, a mouse, but still in the oil. Not really sure how that would happen. So I'm not sure if there's any significance to this as far as the problem with the Tappet, but thought I'd document it just in case. All right, so I already have the airbox off, took the battery out, drained the oil and the gas. So I'm just going to finish taking this thing apart and just get it down to the engine and alternator. All right, so I just got that gas tank off and I see more evidence here of a critter. Here is probably the rest of that acorn that was inside the engine. You know, I also see other evidence here. So I think I will end up taking off the blower housing at some point in case there's more of this stuff in there. You know, again, I'm not sure how this got in the engine, but we'll find out. Okay, so what I wanted to do next is a leak down test. The only problem is I don't have a leak down gauge. So what I do have is a compression tester, and with a broken intake, there's no way I can use a compression tester because it won't let any air in to compress. So what I'm going to do now is pressurize the cylinder. So I'm using the compression tester hose, and I'm going to just basically pressurize the cylinder and listen. And I'm also going to push the valve open under pressure and you should hear it release pressure. So I'm going to try it on both sides. I just want to make sure that there is some pressure buildup. This is where a third hand would be very useful. Yep. Okay, good. So we have compression. Hey, and there's threads. Very nice. I don't know if you can see them, but those are threads, I think, in there. So let me get a few bolts and see if I have one that'll fit. Not bad. I'd say over an inch of threads to work with. So that's good. I'm going to get a rod and cut it about a 1/4 inch shy of being flush here. So that'll let me get this in about a 1/4 inch before it starts pushing the rotor off. But getting ahead of myself, still need to get the stator off. All right, so only one task remains, which is to get the stator / rotor armature off. This shaft is threaded, which is going to make this a lot easier. All I need to do is remove these bolts. There's 4 going around. And this one also has bolts here, which I think go right into the stator to help keep it from moving. So those have to be removed. Then this plate, might have to use a puller to get it off. That should slide out. And then the stator should slide out. And the rotor will have to pop off with a rod, and we'll be ready then to open up that engine. Okay, so generally getting the stator off is a pretty easy thing. Sometimes they do put up a fight. I'm going to start by removing these 4 bolts. There we go. So this is the muffler mount. It's actually in the way of getting this bolt out. Okay, next I got to remove these bolts for the engine mounts. There's 2 obviously on the engine side, and there's 2 on the stator side. So actually, once this comes out, the engine will not be supported properly. So you do need to support the engine, usually with a piece of wood, kind of under the engine crankcase. All right, so just to show you what I did here, those mounts have been completely removed from this housing, and it's just kind of floating, you know, supported by this piece of wood. So now we're going to try to slide the stator out. I still have these bolts in place, which actually sandwiches this housing to the stator, so this whole thing should come off as one piece. If that fights me, then I will probably remove these. I'm a little hesitant because there's probably just a nut on the other end here, which is either going to spin and not loosen all the way, or it's just going to fall off. So don't take these out unless you're sure you're going to take the whole stator out so that you can put the nut back on. And if it puts up a fight, I'll have to use a puller to separate, this ball bearing from this housing. There we go. So the rotor looks in pretty good shape. So now it's just a matter of getting this off, and then finally we can get the engine cover off and take a look inside. Okay, and in the past, to remove the armature, I put a rod like this down the shaft and tighten a bolt to basically push against that tapered shaft to pop this off. And this is already pre-threaded, so it should be really easy to do that. The only problem is that the shaft here is a 3/8 inch bolt, and this rod is 3/8 inch. So if I use this, there's a good chance I might mess up the threads on that tapered shaft. So I'm going to use this as a plan B. For plan A, I'm going to try a different approach. Okay, so this is why I haven't tried this method. You really need to stand the engine up just like this in order for this to work. So I have read in some service manuals you can put oil down this shaft, basically fill it to the top, put some Teflon tape around that nut and drive it down, and it's basically hydraulic pressure will force this thing up and out. So besides the fact you really have to stand it up, it's kind of a pain. The idea of getting oil on the tapered shaft, which is like a friction fit, doesn't sit well. And obviously I can clean it up, but there's still a bunch of oil in this shaft, which I can't really clean that well. And there's a bunch of oil down on the threads on the tapered shaft end, which also doesn't clean up very well. So I'm going to try this with water. And if it works, it's easy to clean up. You just blow some air down here until it's dry. So let's see if it works. All right, so in order for this to work, you need Teflon tape and a liquid. You want to fill it to the top. You do not want any air, or it will not work. I would say that's a bust. Try it one more time with a little more Teflon. Holy cow, it worked. With water. All right, so that worked better than I thought. This will be easy to clean up. Just going to blow it dry, and no damage to the threads and no messy oil to clean up. So, I haven't seen anyone post a video doing something like this, but it worked pretty well. My first attempt, I didn't put enough Teflon in, so it leaked out past the threads. So I probably wrapped it around this time about 7 or 8 turns. and you can't argue with the result. The cam looks fine. This is the intake side, the one that's not working. And I don't know if you can see these. But these are the tappets. So this is the exhaust one, the one that's working. And this is the one that's stuck. And it is stuck. Nothing obvious wrong with it. These are the same on the exhaust and intake, so I'm going to try the exhaust side on the intake and see if it goes in. Yeah. So something happened to this tappet. So I want to try cleaning it up, see if that makes a difference. Wow. So a little bit of carb cleaner and this thing is free. Amazing. Okay, so I'm kind of beside myself at, 2 minutes of cleaning and this thing functions just fine. The gasket came off pretty cleanly. I could probably reuse it, but to be safe, I'm going to get a new gasket, a new oil seal, and I am going to order 2 new tappets anyway, since I'm in here. I really don't see anything wrong with these, but they're basically $5 each. So I will get that. It's a lot easier to do that now while this is open than to put it back together and have it stick again. But the good news is that functions really well and there's no damage. So anyway, I'll turn you back on when I get the parts. All right, so today I ordered the parts, and in doing so I looked up the parts diagram, and you may have already noticed already, only the exhaust valve has that cap, that part 7. The intake does not. So there is no cap floating around inside of that engine anywhere. So I think the problems we had were truly due to the stuck cam follower or tappet, and once we put this thing back together, it should run without issue. All right, so new tappets are here. Just gonna put a little assembly lube on and get this case closed up. Okay, so now I just got to line up the timing marks. There is one on this tooth, and then this big one here that's in between the teeth. Okay, good. We're all timed. On both gears, they line up to the timing marks. So I'm just going to go over here with a little bit more degreaser since I got some assembly lube on there, and then I'll put the gasket on and close this whole thing up. All right, the engine's secure. Next for the armature and stator. Okay, so a very important step is to pull the recoil with the spark plug out and listen. Make sure the stator is not making contact with the rotor. You can tell when you pull the recoil, either it's not going to turn or it's going to turn and you're going to hear scraping in here. In this case, I don't hear any scraping. There's no resistance. So I think I'm good to just finish torquing down these bolts, and I'll just check it one more time. All right, just going to do a quick compression test. This does have a compression release valve, so I'm not expecting to see anything really much above 60, but hopefully I can get close to 60. Yeah, that's good. Alright, so now for the moment of truth. I have not tried starting this yet, so I'm really interested to see what happens. And yes, that breathing is my dog's, not me. Assuming it runs well, I'll check the hertz and adjust it as needed. Alright, so it started pretty easily, it sounded good. Engine speed actually was good. I did not need to adjust it, so I think we're done here. I hope this video helps someone. Thanks for watching.